Okay, today on the bench is a RCI-2990. Before I get too far into this, this radio has an amplifier hanging off the back of it. It's factory. It's a high-power radio. From now on, just let anybody know that's watching videos, and I work on radios for some time now. I no longer work on amplifiers, and I'm no longer going to work on these. I shouldn't say these radios, but the amplifiers on these radios. The mobiles, the base stations, not just this version. Any radio that has a big honking amplifier hanging off the backside, or any of the mobile radios that the entire bottom cover is a heatsink, that means it has a big, powerful amplifier built inside of it. Ain't working on them. I've just had it with these, sorry people if you like them, but junk amplifiers. Amateur radios, not a problem. HF rigs. And honestly, the reason I'll still work on the PA stages in those, you rarely ever see them fail. So, and a lot of the problem, of course, is modifications. People cranking up radios for maximum distortion, basically. Which means maximum smoke, and that's exactly what they do. They end up smoking the blasted things. So yes, no more working on the amplifiers. Other problems with the radio, not a problem. If the driver or final in the radio are bad, sure, not a problem. But if it has anything to do with the coax cable that comes off of this board and goes to that amplifier, at the other end of that amplifier is where Mike stops working on them. So you can send it to a person that works on amplifiers. That would be fine. I just don't have the time nor the want to work on those things anymore. So with that over. So what was the problem? Customer sent this in, very simple, basically, well, I guess it was more than one sentence, but it's only a couple words. Radio has no receive, don't know anything other than that. Thank you. So I verified that. Plugged the radio, took the covers off, checked the radio out, plugged it in, turned it on, yep, didn't hear anything. Transmitted fine, had modulation, AM, upper, lower sideband, CW worked, had modulation on FM, so all transmit modes were working fine. And then I turned the volume up considerably, and I heard this bip, 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 noise. And if I turned it up literally the whole way, you could kind of hear it. It would have been barely audible, probably in like the microphone in this camera. It was that low. But it was there, and there was a sound coming out of the speaker. So what I did was I actually changed the modulation frequency, for the signal that I was injecting into the radio. And I was feeding it with the same thing I'm feeding it right now, a minus 73 dBm signal at 1 kilohertz audio modulation. And if I changed that 1 kilohertz audio modulation to, let's say, 2 kilohertz audio modulation, the beep 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 went to beep 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 beep. It went to a lot higher tone. So obviously some kind of audio was getting out of the speaker, and it was the the demodulated audio that was getting to the speaker, but it was extremely low and at a continuous pulsing. So through much head scratching and looking at the schematic, you probably even see it possibly laying on the bench. The problem is right here. And that is the audio amp I see. This has got to be the strangest failure of an audio amp that I've ever seen. If I could have reduced the frequency at which this thing was pulsing by like 4.403 hertz, it would have been, I could have used this for a clock reference. It was that accurate. Pin 10 is I think that's the bootstrap. If you hooked up a scope probe to pin 10, there was a almost beautiful looking square wave pulsing at around 5 hertz. Now the scope, the frequency counter, it kind of starts to fall apart below 15 hertz, so that's the spectrum analyzer. That scope. There's a little window right there. It has a little built-in frequency counter, but it just has a little, it says 15 and an arrow pointing down, so meaning that whatever the frequencies that's being displayed on the screen is less than 15 hertz, and it just can't resolve that low of a frequency. But the multimeter down here can. Then it does it very accurately. It'll go down to, what, 10,000ths of a hertz at the low frequencies. That'll measure up to 1 megahertz, but also measures extremely low frequencies. So I took the multimeter and checked it, and yeah, it was like 5.403 hertz. Steady. I mean, rock solid steady. You would have thought you were looking at something coming out of like that, a GPS disciplined time reference oscillator. I mean, it was just dead. It just didn't change. Turn the radio off on, didn't matter what you did, it just stayed dead at 5.403 hertz. Now the 10,000ths of a hertz was varying a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I have no idea what is wrong inside of this poor little IC, but yeah, it failed, and it basically I got down to the point where, because there's not a lot attached to the bootstrap. Find it on a schematic here. Now this is actually the schematic for a 2950, but basically same radio, only difference, this is in a big box and has an amplifier on the back. That's really the only real difference. And a few other little whiz-bang things like a tone control, but nothing that would affect this circuit. So here's the audio amp IC, and there is pin 10. So you can see pin 10, you've got an electrolytic capacitor, ceramic cap to ground, it's connected to pin 9. It's also connected through a resistor and a ceramic cap to pin 6. That comes down through a electrolytic capacitor, and then if you follow down, goes to the relay. So this is the PA relay. So, if I checked at the relay, I had a pulse. Now it was a lot lower because, of course, there's components blocking in the way there, but there was still a measurable signal down there, and that's actually the first place that I found it. I forget. I'm not even sure why I had done that. At some point in troubleshooting through the circuit, I had hooked the scope probe up to that relay, and saw that weird frequency, and I'm like, what the heck is this? And kind of backtraced my way up to the audio amp IC, and that's when I noticed that weird frequency. But yeah, it was just steadily humming away at 5.403 hertz. Not kilohertz, not megahertz, 5 hertz, as in like 5.403, so 5 pulses per second. Yeah, I mean, I put a new one in, it's receiving just fine. So, if you ever get a radio, one of these, anything, Galaxy, Ranger, variants of the board, so, this is a EPT 2950 13Z board, so this radio or any of the variants, and you turn the radio on, you've got good modulation, so basically transmit's still fine, but doesn't matter what mode you go to, the only thing you can hear and receive is if you turn the volume up the whole way and there's just this faint pulsing sound, and if you have test equipment and can feed a modulated signal, it's like a 1 kilohertz tone, for modulation, and then change that tone to a higher frequency, and you hear that pulsing, the pitch of the little tone you hear changing, don't bother getting out any test equipment. I'm going to tell you, just change that IC, because yeah, I'd be interested if I found, it didn't cost any money, if there was some engineer sitting in somewhere that was bored. I'd love to send this thing to somebody and find out what exactly went wrong inside of this thing, because that is just strange. I have never seen audio amp IC turn into a 5 hertz crystal oscillator, basically. That's more or less what it was acting like. So, there you go, RCI-2990, no receive audio, and ended up being the audio amp IC. So like I say, if you ever get that volume up the whole way, very faint, continuous, just pulsing sound there, extremely good chance. And actually, you don't need a lot of test equipment. If you put a scope probe on pin 10 and you see it, if you've got even it be a 1 megahertz, an old antique vacuum tube scope from the late 50s, early 60s, and you see something like a 5 or something hertz audio, or a very, very low tone or frequency being generated at pin 10, yeah, just change the IC. It's bad. Yeah, that's weird. So there you go. Just a really quick video. I'll contact the customer and see if he wants a. Actually, let me just key the microphone. And I might. Well, I was going to say that ain't going to do no good because I've got the mirror board out. But that up there will probably. Let's see. Is the clarifier unlocked? No. Huh, surprising. And yes, it is off frequency. Matter of fact, it's... Oh, no, wait a minute. Radio is off frequency because it's not on channel. Yeah, it is off frequency a little bit. Not much. It's only off by... marker. It's off... It's... yeah, actually, it's low by 143 hertz, but... on AM, I haven't tested sideband or anything else. Yeah, I'll see if because it really could use an alignment. The transmit audio is distorted. It's been screwdriver. It hasn't been over modded, so the radio is clean. It does have a mod right there. It's got the sideband, the resistor there for high power, which that just means high distortion. Looks like all the limiters are intact. It's just been screwdrivered. But even at that, they're not turned full rotation. So, somebody hot rodded it. It's distorted. It's going to be splattering a little bit, but it's not horrible. Like, honestly, 90+% of the radios I see. So somebody, they cranked it up. They probably eared it, kind of a by ear, cranked it up. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. So yeah, it could use an alignment, but otherwise... Seems to be a good working radio. So there you go, RCI-2990. Weird pulsing noise. Turn the volume up. Change the audio amp IC.